Part 2, The Float. Introduction to the float phase. Ever find yourself staring at your bedroom ceiling at 3 a.m., wondering how everyone else seems to have it figured out? In this part, we're going to dive into what's actually happening during this period and why feeling like you're floating through life might actually be pointing you toward solid ground. You might be having that strange feeling of drifting through life like a leaf caught in a current. It's like you're there, but not really. Conversations happen, plans are made, but it all feels distant. Welcome to the float, a stage that comes after the initial shock of the drop. You're not sinking anymore, but you're not quite swimming yet either. This phase is about finding your bearings. It's about looking around, realizing that what you're experiencing might feel alien, but it's also part of something bigger, a step in the process of becoming the next version of yourself. Understanding the experience. First up, let's talk about what's really going on when you feel disconnected. That sensation of being outside yourself, the weird feeling that life isn't quite real. Your brain's actually doing something pretty incredible here. It's creating space between who you were and who you're becoming. Think about how your phone needs to shut down completely before it can install a major update. Sometimes your consciousness needs to do something similar. The dissociation you're experiencing, that floating feeling, it's your mind creating the space needed for a complete rebuild. Your brain's actually rewiring its core personality networks right now. All those childhood patterns, those automatic reactions, those ways you used to see yourself, they're all getting a major overhaul. No wonder things feel weird. You're literally becoming a new version of yourself. And don't worry that you're going to lose everything you used to have or all of who you used to be. All of that comes back online after you go through this process. You just have to dive deep into this period of change first before you can integrate the new learning and the new you with the positive things about who you were before this change. The process is called transcend and include. First, you go beyond where you were, first into the strange shock of the drop, and then into the float, and beyond into the swim, which we'll talk about later. Once you've done all of that, you'll then lose the parts of your past which don't serve you or which you've outgrown, but you'll also restore and reintegrate all of the bits which were great and which will have positive outcomes for your future. There's nothing to worry about. Just trust the process and all of it will work out just fine. Understanding dissociation and its purpose. First, let's talk about this floaty feeling. You might be sitting with mates or even alone, and suddenly life feels like a film you're watching rather than living. Maybe your voice sounds strange to you, or you feel like you're observing your own movements from the outside. This is what psychologists call dissociation, a temporary disconnect between your thoughts, feelings, and physical reality. Dissociation isn't a sign that something's broken. Think of it as your mind's way of giving you a time out, a way to pause and create space to process what's happening beneath the surface. It's often triggered by stress, significant change, or even an MDMA experience that opens up hidden layers of your psyche. This experience can feel unsettling, like being out of sync with reality, but it serves an essential purpose, giving your mind the space to adapt and reorganize. For example, derealization, the sense that the world around you feels foggy or unreal, is one way your brain protects you during times of overwhelm. Similarly, depersonalization, where you feel disconnected from your own body or thoughts, it's another protective mechanism, allowing you to take a step back when life feels too intense. These moments are not signs of permanent dysfunction, but rather indicators that your mind is asking for time and care. By acknowledging these experiences rather than fearing them, you can begin to understand and work through them, opening the door to growth and healing. The role of mentors and wise elders. Here's something they don't tell you when you're growing up. Every great man had mentors, every single one. But these days, we're told we need to figure everything out on our own. That's bullshit. Look around you. There are men who've walked this path before. Maybe it's a coach, a teacher, an uncle, or even your boss. The key is finding someone who's not trying to be your mate, but who's willing to be your guide. The right mentor isn't going to try to fix you or tell you what to do. They're going to help you find your own way through this. They've been where you are. They know what this feels like. And most importantly, they made it through to the other side. Here's the kicker. No one gets through the float alone. Humans are wired for connection, and this stage is where finding guidance makes all the difference. Remember those coming-of-age movies where the young hero meets the wise mentor? That's not just Hollywood. It's a blueprint for real life. Whether it's an older mate, a coach, or even a family member, having someone who's been through this journey and can point out the way forward is critical. And it's not about them telling you what to do. The best guides know how to listen, share their own stories, and let you find your own answers. Look for people who inspire you and give you hope, not just advice. Reconnecting with family. Let's talk about your family for a minute. I know. It's complicated. Maybe you're butting heads with your old man more than usual. Maybe your mum's worried because you're not the happy-go-lucky kid you used to be. Here's the thing. This tension, it's actually part of the process. Your relationship with your family might feel a bit off right now. Maybe you're clashing with your parents more often. Or maybe they just don't seem to get what you're going through. That's okay. It's part of the process. The trick here is to start viewing your parents not just as mum and dad, but as humans with their own stories, struggles, and lessons to share. Try starting a conversation, not about what's wrong with you, but about their own transitions into adulthood. You'd be surprised how much wisdom is hiding there, waiting for you to ask. Navigating social dynamics. Finally, let's talk about your crew. Some of your friendships might feel different now, like you're out of sync. Maybe you've noticed that certain mates aren't growing in the same way you are, while others suddenly feel like they're on the same wavelength. This is the time to get intentional about your relationships. Find the people who let you talk openly about what you're going through, the ones who aren't afraid to admit that they're feeling it too. Vulnerability creates connection, and connection keeps you grounded. Finding balance in the float. You're probably noticing how much of your life feels like it's up in the air during the float. But here's the thing. This phase is about learning to be okay with the uncertainty. It's about figuring out who you are when the answers aren't clear and the path isn't straight. Why identity feels fragile. In your early 20s, your sense of self is still forming. You've spent years being shaped by your family, your friends, and even social media. But now you're starting to question all of that. Who are you when you're not just the funny one, the smart one, or the quiet one? This questioning is normal, and it's a sign that you're breaking free from the labels and assumptions that don't fit anymore. You might feel like you're floating because your identity is still building itself. It's like a construction zone. You've torn down some of the old structures, but the new ones aren't fully built yet. The trap of comparison. One of the biggest challenges during this phase is the trap of comparison. Social media makes it so easy to feel like everyone else has their life sorted while you're struggling to stay afloat. But here's the truth. Most people are only sharing their highlights, not the behind-the-scenes chaos. That guy with the perfect relationship, he might be questioning it too. The girl with the dream job, she might hate it deep down. Your journey is unique, and comparing it to someone else's is like comparing a seed to a tree. Focus on watering your own roots. Practical tools to recenter yourself. So how do you steady yourself when everything feels off balance? Start by reconnecting with your body. Dissociation and anxiety thrive when you're stuck in your head, so grounding yourself physically is key. Meditation basics. This doesn't have to be full-on enlightenment stuff. Start with 5 minutes a day. Sit somewhere quiet, close your eyes, and just breathe. Pay attention to the inhale and exhale. If your mind wanders, that's okay. Just bring it back to your breath. Binaural beats. This might sound a bit out there, but binaural beats, specific sound frequencies you can find on YouTube or Spotify, can help calm your brain and ease you back into the moment. Pop on your headphones and let the sounds do their thing. Physical activity. Hit the gym, go for a run, or even just take a walk outside. Moving your body reminds your brain that you're here in the real world. Routine. Reset. When life feels unstructured, even small routines can anchor you. Start your day with a coffee and a plan. End it with a quiet moment to reflect. These habits create a sense of stability. reaching out without fear. This phase is also the perfect time to start talking about what you're going through. It can feel scary at first, especially if you've been taught to keep your struggles to yourself. But here's the thing. When you share your experiences, you give others permission to do the same. Start small. Maybe it's opening up to a mate you trust. Maybe it's texting an older family member who's been through their own ups and downs. You don't need to have all the answers to start the conversation. Just being honest about where you are is enough. Tips for films that capture the wisdom of finding a guide. As we wrap up this part of the series, here's something to leave you with. A little inspiration for the journey. Movies have this incredible way of showing us how transformation unfolds, and some of the best stories highlight the role of mentors and guides in finding your way. If you're looking for a taste of what it means to connect with an elder or a wise guide, these films will hit you right in the feels and give you a deeper sense of what this part of the process is all about. 1. The Karate Kid. And picture this, a young guy, Daniel, who feels totally out of his depth, meets Mr. Miyagi, the unassuming but wise mentor who teaches him way more than karate. Through their bond, Daniel learns about discipline, resilience, and the kind of inner strength that shapes you for life. It's not just about fighting, it's about finding balance. And that's the kind of guide we're talking about. 2. Good Will Hunting. Will is a genius with a chip on his shoulder, stuck in a spiral of self-doubt and pushing people away. Enter Sean, a therapist who doesn't try to fix him, but gently helps him face the things he's been avoiding. This one's a must-watch if you want to see how a guide can help you open up, break through your barriers, and find your own truth. 3. Dead Poets Society. Set in a strict, stifling school, this film follows a group of students whose lives are transformed by their unconventional teacher, Mr. Keating. His mantra? Carpe diem. Seize the day. This one will show you how a guide can spark courage in you to challenge the status quo and think for yourself. It's about learning to see the world and your place in it differently. 4. The Lion King. You probably remember Simba's story, but it's worth revisiting with fresh eyes. Simba starts out carefree, loses himself along the way, and finds his purpose thanks to Rafiki, the wise and quirky guide. Rafiki shows him the power of reconnecting with his past and stepping into his destiny. This film is a beautiful metaphor for how guidance can pull you back when you're feeling adrift. 5. Into the Wild. This one's a bit different. It's a cautionary tale about seeking freedom and self-discovery. Chris, the protagonist, meets several mentors along his journey who try to guide him, even as he struggles to accept their wisdom. It's a reminder that while the path to growth can feel solitary, the connections we make with others are often what ground and guide us. If you're feeling stuck, take some time to watch one of these films. They'll show you what it looks like to find a mentor or guide who helps you navigate this phase of life. You might even see pieces of your own journey reflected back at you, and that's where the magic of storytelling really comes alive. So grab some popcorn, settle in, and let these stories inspire you as you continue to float through this stage. Remember, no one gets through this alone, and sometimes all it takes is a nudge from the right person to help you start swimming again. Let's keep moving forward because next up, it's time to dive into the swim. You've got this.